Okay, so this is the first video in a series that I'm working through on structural simulation that I will be presenting at AU, structural simulation for architects, here coming up this November 2012. And where I'm at on this architectural project that I'm working on is I've got a massing model created, and I'm sort of just getting into the project at this point. And I know what my forms are, I know where I kind of want it to go, but right now I need to start looking at actually what some of the loads are. So rather than employing a simple rule of thumb, such as, oh, a beam's depth is 1 inch versus the length. So if something is spanning 20 feet, it's 20 inches in depth. And that's sort of where I've been at in my structural design career as an architect, which is kind of a scary sentence. But what I want to do is actually start employing some software to get some more realistic numbers earlier on in the process. So rather than just simply employing rules of thumb, I can actually start using some analysis tools to help me size and specify some certain things earlier on, so that my first passes at a structural solution can be better coordinated and more informed. So I'm going to take this massing model. I'm going to start just by slicing a section just through this little portion, and we're going to take a look at that. So I'm going to go to my finished floor elevation, and I'm going to use my section tool, and I'm going to slice a section right through this piece. And then when I open up that section, I get a really simple diagram like this, again, because this is only a massing model. But what I want to be able to do now is I want to go ahead and create an image file of this that I can open up in a program called Force Effect on my iPad. So what I need is just a basic JPEG image file that I can send via email and open up in that piece of software on my iPad. So I'm going to go to the big R, print, and I'm just going to use the Qt PDF writer. I'm going to print my current window. I'm not going to worry about the size and scale right now, because once I transition this to a JPEG file, scale is kind of tossed out the window anyway. And I'll actually be able to set the scale inside of Force Effect. So I'm just center fit to page. It's an 8.5 by 11 page. All of that stuff should be fine. I'm going to say OK. And I'm just going to save this to my desktop as my massing model. I'm just going to put the word section in front of that so I can identify it. Then once I have that in Photoshop, I'm just going to go File, Open. I'm on my desktop. There's my section massing PDF file. And I don't need a remarkably high resolution. I think usually Photoshop tries to bring in a PDF at about 300 dpi. I'm just going to drop that to about 150 to keep the file size down. I'm going to crop this out. I'm going to flatten my layers. And I'm going to do a File, Save As, and I have JPEG selected as my file type. And now that is ready to email. Okay, so once I have a section taken from my massing model in Revit, I can actually export that as a PDF file and convert it to a JPEG. And then simply what I did is I sent it to myself as an image file in email. And the next step then is to open up this program called Force Effect. The icon for it looks something like that little dude right there. Force Effect is a reaction simulation software from Autodesk. And what I can do, I can take a picture of something and begin to trace essentially what would be beams or structural members, or I can also go to my photo album, camera roll, select the section that I sent to myself, and at this time now I have the actual section of the project that I'm working on. And This is just an image file. It doesn't really have any particular scale to it yet, but I've given myself some basic dimensions to the side when I exported the section, so I kind of know what I can start working with. So I'm going to use this tool right here to begin placing some structural members. So you notice my first one just comes up as sort of 5.8 feet. I know that that dimension is actually 24 feet. And now everything from there on out sort of scales accordingly. And I'm just going to quickly trace the key structural elements of the design. And if you notice, it'll also give you an inference or a reference line when I've got things lined up correctly. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 pin connections at the bottom. And if you notice, even though I have this currently put together, this is still sort of this is sort of an indeterminate structure. So what I need to do is add in 1 cross brace at a certain location to make everything rigid, and then this will allow, I don't want to do it like that though, this will allow the software to solve for the overall calculations. And you can see once I have this icon, I know I can start adding in forces and get reactions. So I'm primarily going to be working with live loads or with distributed loads, thinking of live load and dead load combinations on the project. And if you notice, right now as I click and drag, it's going to create a force arrow and a distributed load. That would be more of a wind load right there. So I'm actually not going to want to do that. Select delete, select that piece, force, distributed load. There we go. And I'm going to drag that across, and then I'm going to select the lower piece and slide that distributed load all the way across the interior space. Then I'm going to select the pounds per foot mark and set that interior to 250 pounds per square foot. And you know, of course, I'm sort of thinking about the structure running in both ways. So, you know, maybe that is taking 10 feet in each direction, so it's a fairly large load. The next thing I'm going to do, if you notice the diagram itself, it's being built as I add in forces. My reactions are. So those are going off the page right now, but one of the things I can do if I click and hold, I should be able to get this little diagram right here, which sort of scales everything to fit inside of my space. Try that one more time. There we go. So that way I can kind of keep it. It's essentially scaling the reactions down visually so I can see them. Let's add in another load right across here. That's going to be about 100 pounds per foot on that exterior deck. Let's slide that all the way across. And then I want to add a roof load as well. I'm going to use 100 pounds per foot again on it. So again, to bring up that number, I'm just clicking on the pounds per square foot icon. There it goes, pounds per square foot. Just having a little trouble selecting that particular member. Then I'm going to click on the lower grip and bring that across. And so essentially, that builds all of the reactions for this entire case. And the next thing I want to do is actually create the calculations for all of the members. So I'm going to click the Calculate button at the top. And this is going to create a report. So there's my overall reaction analysis. But then as I come down, you'll notice it's going to break down the reactions for individual elements, like element AB. So that's the vertical column. Element BE. And in particular, in this case, I'm really interested in this beam right here, beam CD. So let's see if we can find it. There it is, beam CD. So this gives you the shear force and moment diagram, and I can start looking at the maximums and minimums on that. And I can use that as a starting point rather than a simple rule of thumb to begin sizing beams and sizing structure. So the last thing that I want to do with this is I want to get this off of my iPad and back onto my computer. So to do that, I'm simply going to click the send by email, and I'm just going to send this to me. And then the send button, and that is headed to my computer so I can use it for analysis.